Well, thanks for tuning into the Market Wrap. I'm Niraj Shah Nickey Mirchandani, and it turned out to be a day wherein the banks again participated, much like yesterday that we were talking about how the banks were at the forefront. We saw banks being in the forefront again today. And remember, this morning I was talking about how we needed to take out 31,000. That's what technical experts suggested was a bit of a, how do we say, a hurdle rate. And now the 31,000 is taken off. Maybe just maybe the bank Nifty, if all things stay well in the globe, might help us move towards the 14,000 mark. It's a milestone and not a target, but nevertheless, that is what it is. Let's get the indexes up on the screen and show you what the Nifty did, by the way, first. Not as gung-ho as yesterday, you have to admit it. And we had a few losers, particularly from the commodity space coming off. But let's talk about the gainers first. So tech and banking, when both of those do well, very high probability that we'll continue to do well. IndusInd Bank, Axis, ICICI Bank, HDFC Bank, all of them in the green. And tech, with Tech Mahindra, HCL Technologies putting up a good show, TCS inching closer to the 3,000 mark, a fairly decent outing in the session. What didn't do well? Well, HDFC Life came off a little bit in the session, but look at that. Commodities, JSW Steel was the top gainer yesterday, down about 1.25% today. Tata Motors was amongst the better performers yesterday, down about 1.5%. And Hindalco was amongst the other culprits that came off in the session. So commodities had a bit of a downtick today. Largely, the going is such that people may not complain too much. Maybe at least the large cap investors won't. The Nifty traders won't. What stood out and what didn't? Nikki, what was good afternoon? Or good evening? What was the key standout feature of the large caps today?
Yeah, we've spoken in detail about IT and private banks, but I'd like to move the focus to Bajaj Auto because that's one stock which has scaled a record high and also entered rupees 1 trillion market capitalization club. So on account of that, you've seen some amount of traction building in. Of course, by the end of the day, you saw some profit booking kicking into that counter, because of which it ended a little lower than at the highs that it scaled to during the day to an extent of 2.5%. But earlier part of the day, there was a note coming in from NOMURA which said that the Cabinet Ministry is soon going to be coming out with details of PLI scheme. Now, do remember the fact that PLI scheme was announced back in November 11, and this scheme itself implies an incentive of around 570 billion rupees coming for auto sector over a span of next 5 years. And in terms of the advanced cell batteries, the incentives is to the tune of 181 billion rupees. At this point of time, the PLI scheme is likely to give annual benefit to an extent of 2% overall for the industry, revenue on an average. The company with high export revenue are likely to be the key beneficiaries according to the note. And primary beneficiary to this is, of course, Bajaj Auto, TVS Motor, and Ashok Leyland. All of this meet the criteria of high export revenues. So some amount of beneficiaries or some amount of gains ticking in on account of that as well. And of course, apart from that, as I just mentioned, that the company or the stock has joined the elite club of companies with over rupees 1 trillion in market capitalization. This is the third automobile company to achieve that kind of milestone. Other automakers are Maruti Suzuki and Mahindra & Mahindra. With this, I'm going to hand it back to you, and Niraj will ask you about any trends that you're picking up in the broader space as well.
Yeah, actually, we had the perfect screen out there. Let's just get that going, because the market breadth, as I said today, maybe left a bit desired, which is I was saying that the large cap Nifty traders may not have a complaint. The broader end of the spectrum, a little bit in trade. Let's just look at the breadth, 204 to 293. So the broader end of the spectrum came off a little bit. Now, due to the losers, not too many known names out there. Whirlpool corrected a bit, but that's not a very liquid stock. Jindal Stainless and Jindal Stainless Hisar, Jindal Steel and Power. So metals came under a bit of pressure. Aegis Logistics and Carborundum Universal. So industrials came under a bit of pressure. So that was the state of affairs. What did well? Quest Corp, 7% higher. There's some strength for Sterlite Tech, some strength for Schaeffler India, ball bearing company. IGL, MGL had a fairly decent outing with Gujarat Gas didn't. So not the best of days, I must say, for the mid-cap space. A lot of high-flying names came under a bit of pressure. Any reasons for specific names?
Yeah, I'm going to be talking about Quest Corp. There are a couple of facts that I'd like to highlight here because the stock has gained as much as 11.5% during the intraday trade. And it's probably the biggest single day gain that we've seen for the stock, coming in over a span of 1 month last and trading at the highest level probably in the last 10 months. At the volumes at this point of time, they've almost tripled the 20-day average volume. So clearly the stock has been trading or did trade on heavy volumes. And at this point of time, and the RSI is also seems to be on the in the overbought territory to an extent of around 69.5. It's headed towards that overbought territory right now. And at this point of time, all the 13 analysts have been tracking the stock as per the Bloomberg consensus, have a buy recommendation. And also to bear in mind the fact that the stock price at this point of time is trading a little higher than the consensus target price. So clearly the stock has defined some kind of analyst recommendation at this point of time. Apart from that, Gujarat Gas rallied to an extent of 3.5% in trade today, but cooled off by the end of the trade. Cogensis report suggested that the company is going to be upping gas prices by as much as 4 rupees per SEM for Morbi clients. Apart from that, earlier in the month, Cogensis had reported that Gujarat Gas has already sought permission for hiking in the product prices for a slew of its companies, the subsidiaries particularly, that have been, going to be raising in price. So this is probably in continuation to the announcement that was earlier probably reported by Cogensis. So you've seen some amount of smart uptake, but then again, some profit booking which kicked in the last leg of the trade. But Niraj, any specific trend that you are picking up or anything that you'd like to keep an eye out on?
I think coming closer to the year end, maybe the party scene, but that notwithstanding, Nikki, I think just before we discuss the globe, keep in mind the banks remain the center stage. The world is a different kettle of fish, and Nikki will speak about that, but the banks remain center stage. And as long as banks do well, and if autos ahead of the PLI scheme do reasonably okay, I actually have a fighting chance of knocking out 14,000 before the year comes to a close. Let's wait and watch if that happens. But our global market supported me.
Niraj, before I could highlight the global markets, I'd like to ask if you've got a chance to see the CPSE rebalancing, which is probably going to take place sooner. Any kind of additions that you're seeing at this point of time? From where I read is probably ONGC and GAIL will probably see some amount of traction building on account of that. But apart from that, at this point of time, Niraj, global markets, please go ahead.
No, just this, that while this may happen, is also this whole belief that GAIL will actually see an exclusion from the index and Tata Consumer might come in. So this flows is a bit of a tricky business. But yeah, which reminds that the amphi rebalancing would happen, and maybe people should focus on the large cap versus the small cap and the mid cap space as well. And maybe those might be. So lots of rebalancings. Let's see how it works out. What's the globe looking like, Nikki?
Yeah, I mean, the sentiment pretty much remains to be positive at this point of time. I think the kind of rally that we've seen overnight coming in for the US market, that has continued, and the sentiment is, the underlying momentum is pretty much, after the signing of the pandemic aid bill by Donald Trump, that's probably buoyed the rally in the global market, and the sentiment continues to be buoyant after that. At this point of time, European markets continue to trade in green, and if you look at the US stock futures, they're also indicative of a positive start coming in for Wall Street. Net, we're looking at a pretty picture of sorts for global market at least. But with this, it's a wrap. Thank you so much for watching.